Welcome back everyone to another episode of Pineleaf Responds, and today I'll be responding to Ending's question of what is my favorite skirmish. Now you'll know I just can't leave it at one, so therefore I'm going to instead answer what are my favorite three skirmishes. And let us begin with number 3. And I should warn you that, yes, this list is going to be slightly different than the answer that I gave yesterday on a stream with Andy. So you can see that this list is dynamic. And tomorrow I may have a different answer because it depends on my mood. Because number 3 is Trouble in Tuckborough. And I like Trouble in Tuckborough because it is set in the Shire, and as you know, I play hobbits quite a bit. In fact, you can see that I am playing a hobbit now. So therefore, because I play hobbits quite a bit, I would have a natural affinity towards the Shire. I also like that this is a relatively straightforward skirmish. Yes, sometimes I like some complications here and there in a skirmish, but there are times when you just like to have something that you don't have to worry about weird things happening all over the place, like dodging boulders and all the like. And so therefore, straightforward Trouble in Tuckborough. Third, this is one of the few places where you could presently see the world after the ring is gone. At least it's gone from the world and there's no direct stuff being done out of Sauron. Obviously, Saruman's evil, helping to cause Saruman's evil, and Saruman, of course, wanting revenge against the Shire and all that stuff is what causes the scenario for the skirmish. But this is one of the few places that we have right now where we could see something in the world after the ring is destroyed. Now, what are the disadvantages that make this number 3 instead of number 1? First off, mob density. Yes, there are some classes where I really like the mob density. I have no trouble with it here with the Warden, and it could almost be considered a plus here. But there are some classes where I'm reluctant sometimes to play this class because I'm not in a mood to fighting against 3 to 5 enemies at a time. When I am, fine. When I'm not, I play a different skirmish instead. The other disadvantage is why I'm showing you the second half of this skirmish instead of the first half, and that's because it's set at night. And it doesn't start getting light until you get to the latter parts of the skirmish. And that makes for pretty poor YouTube content, as you're probably witnessing on the background video here. So that is number 3, Trouble in Tuckborough. Number 2 is Protectors of Thungelhod. Now I like Protectors of Thungelhod because you get to play with siege equipment. I told you occasionally I like complications, and yes, this is a complication that I do like, having the ability to go and shoot the siege engines at the enemy as they come. Now this one's unusual in its mob density because in the solo runs, you invariably get 6 enemies at a time, so therefore, either you want to be someone who could be like a yellow line champ who could rip through 6 enemies at a time, or you might be wanting to use that siege equipment in order to weaken up the enemies a little bit. Now, I will have to admit that the skirmish did lose its luster because it used to be my favorite, and there was a long history of me calling it my favorite. But 2 things made it drop. One of them is epic battles, because that's the other place you could use siege equipment, and the luster of using siege equipment drops a little bit as a result of that. And the other one has to do with some AI changes that were once made to the soldiers, because that means that soldiers like protectors, they don't act very well in that skirmish. Yes, there are tricks in order to keep them from going on the other side of the wall, but I would rather not to have to worry about doing tricks like that. So therefore, I am now using on the characters that used to use protectors. I am now tending to use either archers or herbalists. Actually, it wasn't protectors I was using. I was actually using banner guards, not protectors. But they act the same way in standing in front of you. So warriors, protectors, and banner guards are the ones that I really no longer use because of the activities of this particular skirmish. So that caused it to drop down to number 2. And finally, number 1 is Thievery and Mischief. So what do I like about Thievery and Mischief? First off, this is another very straightforward skirmish. In fact, if there's a skirmish that's more straightforward than Trouble and Tuckbro, it's got to be Thievery and Mischief. It is almost, in my mind, the baseline skirmish. And that might explain why it was used for the tutorial, or at least a section of it was. Because it's nice and clean and simple and straightforward on the solo version of it. Of course, it's also at an iconic location. This is the first hub where everybody comes together. You might have some characters that can avoid the Shire. You might be able to never go into Heirlooming. You might never see Archit, for example. Okay, you may have to step in there for a storyline or something like that occasionally, but on the most part, you really don't. You can go all your time without questing in those areas. Bree, though, is the first place where everyone really will eventually quest, unless you're really going out of your way in order to miss the place. So therefore, it's an iconic location. It's straightforward. It's also a good length. It's a little bit shorter than, say, Tuckbro or something like this. And I think it's a nice, quick, easy to do skirmish in my mind. And it also scales very effectively, because the solo version is nice and easy in the boss fight, and then it gets a little bit more complicated in small groups. Then in full groups, you've got the healer on the enemy side, which makes it a little bit tougher and more challenging. And then in the raid, it's a real challenge. So it scales based on your party size, and I think that's very good for group size scaling content. So therefore, my favorite skirmish that I have is Thievery Mischief. You say, what about Defense of the Prancing Pony? I prefer offensive skirmishes over defensive skirmishes. So therefore, I have decided, yes, Thievery Mischief over Defense of the Prancing Pony. Though Pony, I will say, is probably number 4. And there you have it, my top 3 skirmishes. And until next time, this is Pineleaf Needles reminding you to skirmish responsibly.